Hello, you alright? My name's Shay Stedford. I am a production tutor here at ACM, and today is the first after school club session. And in this session, I'm going to be giving you a guide at making beats from the ground up, pretty much. So we're going to be making a basic beat. I'm going to be making house music today. If you don't like house music, it doesn't really make a difference. It's just going through the techniques and using the software. Today I'm going to be using this software. This is Logic Pro X. If you don't have this already, that's not a problem. It is free for 90 days. So you can go to the App Store and it is completely free for 90 full days, fully functioning, and it gives you all the access to everything. Or you may already be aware of something called GarageBand. This is a free app that you can get with any Mac when you buy it, and also on the phone. And this is basically a no limits version of GarageBand. So it takes GarageBand to the next level. So if you've got experience with GarageBand, you'll probably know a little bit more about this. However, at ACM, we do courses based around softwares like Logic Pro, Ableton, and many others as well. But I'm going to be showing this in Logic today because it is one of the most logical, funnily enough. So yeah, let's get straight into this because this is going to be the first bit of music I've made today. So yes, let's get into it. So first of all, this is Logic. That's what it looks like when you open it. I'm going to start with drums today. So the idea behind that is to get a groove down. So groove meaning like, well, groove, just generally a feeling, just something to work from. What I'll then probably do is look at a bass line and then go into melodies. But first, let's look at drums. So over here, in Logic, as soon as you open it, it asks you what you want to open. Is that going to be a software instrument? Now, these are sounds that are within the software. So synthesizers that produce sounds, drum machines that give you drum sounds that you can sequence and so on. You can have an audio track. This is where you would drag and drop samples and loops and even record your own voice. We've got a drummer option here. Now this is kind of like a mixture between a software instrument and audio, as it gives you the option to choose a specific drummer, and there's some sort of AI that goes on in the background where you decide how it's played and so on. We're not going to touch that today. We're going to do it all manually ourselves. We've got external MIDI. This is so Logic can send out information like what notes to play to things like this that you see around me. So synthesizers and samplers and drum machines and stuff. External things out of the computer. Then we have guitar or bass. This is generally an audio track. Exactly the same. It has some effects already placed on the tracks that are suited towards guitar and bass. But we're going to pick a software instrument from the list down here. I'm going to go and find from the Logic's menu something called the Ultrabeat drum machine. This is an excellent drum machine if you want to get classic drum sounds, from real sounding kits to electronic kits to legendary drum machines and so on. So it's a good place to start. So we're going to create an Ultrabeat. It looks like this. Don't worry. It looks pretty crazy. And instantly a lot of people will look at that and then just go, nope. But I understand that. The only thing we're going to do in this today is pick a drum kit. We're not going to be using this interface at all. We're going to be using something called a step sequencer, which makes everything a lot simpler and a lot more visual to work with. So from the list up here, I'm going to go to my drum kits and I'm going to pick a classic house drum machine, the 909 from Roland. Now this drum machine, when I say a classic, is the sound of house music as we sort of know it today. The sound of house music drums is born from the 909. You've got other drum machines like the 808 and other drum machines like the SP1200, the LinnDrum, all of these other drum machines. The 909 is kind of king in house. So what do we do now? First of all, we need to be able to sequence it. So what I'm going to do is come over to here to my little scissor tool. Now this means editor. This doesn't mean I'm going to cut anything. It just means editor. So I'm going to click on this. And here, look, we can see we've either got a piano roll of which all of our sounds are placed down at the bottom here. We can even set trigger points and say at a certain point we want it to play pattern 1 through 24. We're not going to do that because that's even more confusing. We're not going to go to a score editor because I'm not scoring drums. If you want to score stuff in here, this is where you would do it. I'm going to go to the step sequencer. Now here, watch. I can click on any one of these and it will play me the sound from that drum machine. Ready? Kick, rim, snare, clap, snare 2, and so on. I've got all the sounds. Now how this works, if I just press play, along here, this is where our sequence will start to play from. So we've got 16 steps, and so I place 4/4 kick drums. 4/4 meaning 4 beats in a bar. So 1, 2, 3, 4. As you can see up here, as I draw that in, we get them show up in our section here. At the moment, I've put that one off beat, so it will sound like this. Ready? A bit wonky. I want it to be 4/4, so I'm going to put it on the beat. And you can see these change in the background, so it gives you a visual representation of your pattern. So, ready? Cool. I'm going to shorten this clip down to just a bar, so we can see from this here what we're working with in this grid. Now, as you can see, when I press play, if I just loop this over, when I press play, you see the line follows it. So any trigger points that we put down will end up playing. So let's try and make a basic beat. Let's find some claps. We'll put clap on every second. It's pretty good. And again, so you get the visual representation. Let's find some hi-hats. Cool. Let's get some closed hats. Pretty good. We've got an open hat there, pedal hat. I like that one just at the end. So let's have a listen to this now. I quite like that, but it's too repetitive, it's too boring. This is when we can start to think about creating a longer pattern with a few different variations and changes. Now, it's very important when you're making beats especially to have variations at the end of not necessarily a bar, but at least 4 bars, just so there is some variation to the beat. And the easiest way to do that is to copy and paste each of these patterns over and just make slight changes to them. And the change normally happens within the last quarter of the bar. So I'm going to do that here. Just by holding down the Option key and clicking and dragging, I can click and drag over and make copies. So now we've got a 4-bar loop, but each of these sections will represent different step sequences. So I might put another kick there. Like that. And now what I'm going to do here is put one there, and maybe a little bit of a trill here. Now by that I mean this. I can go to the drop down arrows at the end of each of these sounds. And now I get the option to change the velocity of every single one of these notes. Velocity meaning the volume, basically how hard something is hit. But also the note repeat. So on this one, I'm going to put 3 note repeats. So let's have a listen to the end here and see what it sounds like. It's not too bad. Maybe put that one there instead and give that 3. It's not too bad. It cuts itself off though. You can hear that what it's doing is it cuts off from this open hat. So what I might do is change this, put one there and put this one here instead, because this one doesn't get cut out. It doesn't get choked, it's known as. So here, I'm going to grab a triplet on this one, but pull down the velocity slightly. I'm also going to go to this kick drum here and pull the velocity of this kick drum down. This just makes it sound a little bit more human played. Okay, so let's have a play again. Pretty nice. At the start of this, I think I'm going to want to go for an 8-bar. But the very first one, I'm going to find a crash cymbal. There must be a crash cymbal here. If there isn't one, we'll just have to find one and put one in. So I don't think I can see one here. We don't have a crash, but we do. I like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that at the end of this 8 bars. So in this last one, I'm going to put a little bit of a snare fill. So it's the second snare. first snare. So right, let's listen to a 2-bar pattern just at the end. Boom, boom, boom. Kind of like that. Again, I'm going to pull down the velocity of the second one. So now we've got a good basis for an 8-bar loop that's got a bit of variation in it. It's pretty cool. These are still a bit too loud, all of them. So I'm going to pull the volumes down of these back down to about 57 out of 127 possible values. So basically in MIDI terms, so what we're doing here is dealing with something called MIDI, a musical instrument digital interface. So we're telling the computer to make certain sounds, what notes to play, but not only what notes to play, how hard to play them, how long to play them, and how many times we play them. So here, this is a MIDI trigger telling this snare drum to play when it gets to this section of the pattern. But then not just what to play, how loud to play it or how hard to play it. So we're telling these to play at various volumes. And as you can see from the bottom one, this one is going to note repeat that many times on that one trigger. So let's play again. At the end here, I'm going to press Option and C and change the colour of this last loop. So what this tells me is that this is my fill loop. I'm also going to add a few more kicks in here. Really like that. There's like that, just little extra change that you get in the last quarter makes a whole difference to the overall pattern. So I'm going to drag and drop these across. So now I've got a 16-bar loop, but on the first part of this bar here, I'm going to drop the first kick and have it going on the upbeat. So now we've got a 16-bar loop that started from a 1-bar loop. So let's listen to this through and see if we can try and imagine some sort of bass line to go underneath it. So let's have a play around and see what we get. Really like that fill. I might actually try some pads instead of a bass line here. Awesome. So I'm really liking how that's progressing at the minute. I can always go back and add in more drum sounds at the later stages, but at the minute we've got a good sounding drum track down. We're at 125 beats per minute, which is middle ground house territory. House is anywhere between 120 all the way up to about 140, depending on the style of house. Then you go into the more dancier styles like hard dance and trance, which is 140 up to 160 and so on. But we're in the nice sort of deep house area at the minute. So let's think about having a melody. Now, one thing we can do is look at Logic's stock synths again. And one synth that's excellent for this is the retro synth because it's really basic. So here in Logic, I'm going to pick the retro synth. I'm going to press OK. And it opens us this. Now, this may look again quite daunting, but if you're interested in synthesis and the creation of sounds from raw oscillators and raw waveforms, this is probably the best one to help you learn it. This synthesizer, if we stay on the analog table, consists of 2 wave shapes that you can blend together. It has a filter in it. It has an LFO, which is a low frequency oscillator. These 2 are your standard audible oscillators, ones that you can hear. And this one is so low in frequency that it can be used to modulate certain parameters and make them move up and down without you physically doing them yourself. And then we have some envelopes. These determine how a certain parameter opens and closes, like an envelope. I suppose why it's called an envelope. But the filter, how the filter opens and closes, you can draw that in visually, and the amplitude, the volume. So I'm going to go from the menu here. I'm going to stay with the stock sounds just for this. And I'm going to go to the pads because I'm going to want to make like a chord pattern out of this. So I'm going to pick Lush Pad. Can't go wrong with Lush Pad. I'm going to use a keyboard to play this out. However, you can press Command and K and it brings you up a music keyboard in Logic. So I can play using the keys. So have a look. Pretty nice. Again. nice, right? However, you don't get to change the velocity with this. This is a velocity sensitive synthesizer, so the harder I play notes, the different the sound is going to be. So let's have a look, see what I mean. So the harder I play the notes, it's got something called aftertouch, which means the harder I press it down once I've triggered that note to go on, the filter will open and close, because that's what's been mapped to the aftertouch. So you see you can get some really nice swells in this. I'm just going to record a basic pass over these 8 bars probably. So I'm going to press R for record and just pray that it comes out good. So let's see what we get. That was pretty nice, that little whoop whoop. See, it's nice aftertouch. So with those MIDI notes, you can see here, look, these are all the notes that I've played. All I have to do is double click on it and it opens me up to the piano roll. Now, as you can see here, the step sequencer is grayed out. This is because we can't step sequence the notes. We can step sequence drums, but we can't step sequence a synthesizer. We have to play those notes in using either a keyboard or the computer's keyboard or a piano roll. Now, as you can see here, the various colours relate to the various velocities that we have. So if I just open up my automation lane here, you'll see all of these green lines show the various velocities from very small, low, up to very high, meaning hit quite hard. Okay, I'm going to leave the velocities as they are because it sounded quite nice. But what I am going to do is quantize this. Now, this means putting the notes bang to grid so they snap perfectly in time. As you can see here, some of these are on time, like that one's dead on the line. That one's pretty much on the line. This one's a bit rubbish. These ones are all early. And that's because we're human. And it's how things are played. The only thing that I'm going to quantize in this is the first chord. In order to do this, I just select all the notes. So click and drag over the notes. And over here, we've got time quantize. I can just press Q on the keyboard and it'll do it for me. But I'm going to press Q here. And you see all of those notes snap to be online with the grid. Let me just zoom in here so you can see what I'm talking about. So if I undo that, you see this is the timing of how I played it. If I press Q, it snaps them all perfectly on time. So I know that the first chord in that pattern is going to be perfectly on time. So I'm going to drag and drop this across. So you've got 2 of these. And let's have a listen and see what we get. It's a little bit loud, so we can pull the volume down. Pretty nice. One thing that's annoying me a little bit is the sound's a bit too thick. I know that's going to really overpower everything else that's going to go in the track, like high synths and arpeggios and things. One way we can sort that out is to add in something called equalization. And now over here in the track itself, you've got something called EQ, which is short for equalization. It's the abbreviated term. I could double click on that and it opens me up this visual graph. Now, if I press play, you will see, if I just mute the drums quickly, this is the frequency content of those pads. We can see frequencies as low as 20, which is low as we can hear as humans, very, very low bass, and then 20,000 hertz. Now, this is as high as we can hear as humans, very high frequency. Now, frequency is just pitch, so certain frequencies will give you a specific pitch, for instance, but the visual representation we get is showing us what frequencies are playing and how loud they're playing within a given sound. So here we can see it's very low mid-frequency heavy. I can get rid of this by hovering over an area and pulling down the volume of that frequency. So now it's no longer as harsh as it was, like this, where it's thick and warm, but it's probably going to get in the way of other instruments later. It's not really that bright, so I can brighten it up with some higher frequencies by clicking this node and making it brighter and more present with some equalization. See, it's a lot clearer and more open. Let's bring the drums back in. that. Maybe pick a filter, like a low pass filter. It's kind of nice. I'll probably leave that about there actually, it's kind of nice. Because now it's still open, but it sounds a bit more vintage and a bit older. Next we can think about a bass line. So I'm going to pick the same synth again. So I'm just going to duplicate this track over. However, this one, I'm going to take the equalizer off and I'm going to change the preset. So I'm going to come to something called a synth bass because that's what we're looking for. Let's look at deep square bass or classic analog bass. There we go, classic house. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the keyboard for this, the actual keyboard, because it's fixed velocity. Now I want all of my notes in the bass line to be the same velocity so they're consistent. If I use the keyboard to do this, my playing isn't going to be exact every time, so I'm going to have to go in afterwards and make all the velocities the same. To change that, or to just not have to bother doing that, I'm going to click Command and K, and now all of my velocities, as you can see from this visual, are going to be at 98 out of a possible 127. I mentioned this before, MIDI works in steps, and you have 0, meaning off, nothing, and then 1 to 127. 127 being maximum or 100%. You can't go any further than that. Whether that's how hard you hit something, whether that's a turn of a knob, anything like that. The full 100% is 127 steps of MIDI. So here we're at 98. So we're not that hard, but we're not quiet either. We're in the middle. So let's have a listen and see what this sounds like. Command and K. I'm going to come down to my settings here because it looks like I've got a bit of phasing going on. That's because my polyphony is on 4, meaning that it can play 4 notes at once. This is a bass line, I want it to be monophonic. I want to play 1 note at once. Detuning, I don't want it to detune at all. That's what's giving me that weird phasing sound. And unison, I don't want any unison. That's basically taking voices and making them play over the top of each other, which again is going to make them start to phase. Great for things like lead sounds and to make them sound a bit wider and a bit more exciting, but solid central basses, not that good. So now with those settings changed, we should get a more solid bass. Let's have a listen. Still going left and right, which is a bit annoying. So what I'm going to do instead is change the spread down to 0. So we have 0 stereo spread. This should now be central. Perfect. I'm going to change these to square waves. Change the sense to 0, so we've got no detuning. Lower an octave. Pretty nice. However, not in key. So let's have a play around and see if we can get the right key. I really like the bass line being there. Let's have a play around. This is where the fun comes into making music. Making those little slight decisions and just trying to figure out how to get these things to work. So, this bass line is a little bit too sharp. I can see here the filter's all the way down. However, the filter envelope is really snappy and it opens fully. All I need to do is close this to make it seem a little bit duller. Much nicer. Add some sub into it. It's pretty good. I really like that bass line, and I think I'm going to have to get rid of these pads, but I could just quantize them to a specific scale later. I'm going to mute these, and I'm going to go with the bass line instead, I think. Yeah, I really like I think that's going to work really well with these drums. Now remember, doing things like this when you're producing music is totally okay. Making split decisions and changes on the fly, if you think it works, awesome. It's all part of the fun and all part of the journey into getting that final product that you really like. Happy accidents and surprises what make good music. Now, I wouldn't have figured this bass line if I was playing it on the keys. I would have automatically gone to the same keys I played for the chords. But because I'm using the keyboard to do it, the actual computer keyboard, my fingers just landed on some notes. Great bass line for house. So let's record that in. Really nice. So go back in, make sure that all these notes are nicely quantized up, because at the minute my playing is kind of bad. So I'm going to select all the notes. I'm going to quantize them to a 16th note. However, I'm going to add some swing to this. Now, what this does, if I zoom in here, you'll see adding swing on a 16th note is going to move some of these slightly off time and give it a bit more groove. So it works with the drums to give a bit more of a housey, deep house groove to the sound. It makes you want to move your neck a bit more. So let's have a move of this, and we'll see as I move it, you see some of these notes, they move off the line. Again, if you just concentrate on this note here, let's move this back. See that? That's a massive change. Now what we get from this is this. So those every second note don't like that last bit, so I can go in and just manually change that now. So let's have a listen. Whoa, just pick one. I like that. Maybe there. Boom, 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 boom. Like that. Duplicate that over. So now we've got a bass line in. So let's see what we can salvage from these chords, because they're going to be out of key at the minute, but it sounded really nice. So where are we? Let's go up an octave. I'm going to get rid of those. I'm going to get rid of them and just start to play a new one. So let's have a play around. It's kind of nice. Let's try that. I really like that. See just the difference. The chords sounded good before, but now it sounds better just being single notes. And we can change these into chords if we want to in a bit. So I'm going to select these notes, quantize them up. I'm going to copy this over, but I'm going to change just that second one there, just to make a little bit of a difference. Nice, so let's have a listen together. These aren't bad, but at the minute the quantizing's a bit too sharp. So I'm going to bring the note timing down a bit. There we go. So now you can see that it's got less possible places to snap to grid. If I do it to 8th note, I know that they're all going to be perfectly on time. So let's have a listen again. Really like that. It's kind of coming together a bit. I think we need like an arpeggio, like a plucky sort of sound. In order to do this, I'm going to use this Lush pad again. But all I'm going to do is manipulate the timing of the sound. So With this sound here, let's have a play. So Command K. Now at the minute, it starts very slow. The amp envelope, the volume of the sound, starts quiet and gradually gets loud. What we want it to be loud as soon as we hit it. See? But I don't want it to be loud for very long. I want it to be loud for a split second and then go really quiet again. And I don't want it to last for very long either, so I pull the release down. Much nicer. I'm going to do the same thing with the filter now. Make it super snappy. And I'm going to pick a different filter, a steeper curve. So something like this. That's pretty nice. Right, now I want to play these notes, but I want to do it with an arpeggio. Now, in order to do that, I can come over to my MIDI effects on this track and pick arpeggiator. Here we go. Sweet. I've got different variations, up and down. Down, up. Down. Kind of works for house down. We've also got variations, so a little bit of a difference to where the notes lie. Standard one's good. Octaves, so it plays 2 octaves on each note. We're going to keep it basic for now. Let's have a listen to what this sounds like with it and play around with some notes. That's pretty nice, just bashing notes on the keyboard in that key. Ready? Let's just record that in. I just literally bashed the notes. You can probably see from the keyboard, they're all white notes. So I know that it's going to be in key. Let's come in here. Let's quantize all these up. And go back into the sound itself and manipulate it a bit more. Nice bit, just subtle like that really, isn't it? Cool. Now I can think about, first of all, pulling the output volume down a bit so it's not too loud, it's not clipping. But now I can think about adding some effects. So on this sound, I'm just going to solo it quickly. It's not too bad, but I want it to have a bit more swell, more environment. Best way to do that, add something called reverb. So reverberation, generally we have that in the world around us all the time. Every room that you're in, whenever you say anything, it will reverberate around the surfaces of the room, giving you the sound of reverb, like what you hear in the bathroom. It's why you sound amazing when you sing in the bathroom, because it's a very reflective surfaced space most of the time with tiles and stuff. So yeah, we're going to add in some reverb, some fake space. Again, I'm going to use the stock Logic one here, and I'm going to make it go on for fairly long. We're going to pick a synth hall. It's kind of nice. It's got more of an environment to it now, more of an atmosphere. Next thing I'm going to add in is a delay. So I'm going to come down to my delay menu and I'm going to pick the standard Logic stereo delay. This gives you a delay for the left and a delay for the right. And let's see what they sound like. It's not bad. I think I want it to have less, so we'll go a half note triplet and a half note. I think might work. So we'll play around and see. That's kind of nice. I like that. Cool. Right. We'll bring the mix of that down a little bit so it's not very loud. And let's have a play around with all of it and see what we get. everything's sounding pretty sweet. Now we've got an idea. This is like the drop. Now we can think about arranging it. Now remember, we're just making ideas, just a basic idea here for a tune. And we've got a drop idea of 16 bars. The easiest way to sort this out and get a full arrangement is to select everything and just copy and paste it over loads of times. Now, the reason for this, we're not just going to leave it like this. We're not going to leave it at 65 bars, which is 2 minutes. We're going to grab all of these like this. There we go. So we're going to grab everything we've got here, which now goes up to 3 minutes and 5 seconds. We're obviously not going to play a loop for that long. It's going to sound boring. What we're going to do is delete things and make a basic arrangement. So first of all, for the first 8 bars, I don't want any drums and I don't want any bass. I just want the pads. Okay. Next 8 bars, I still don't want any bass. I do want the I do want that. And I don't want any drums. Okay. Next on the 16 bar, I don't want any bass still. Okay, but I do want my drums. However, the drums I want for this first section, all I want is kick drums. Okay, I just want a 4/4 kick drum. So I'm going to get rid of all of these. I'm going to open up this loop, so this sequence that I'd made previously. And we're going to get rid of everything that was in there other than the kicks. And I'm going to duplicate this over a load of times. But on this last one, put a double kick. Then we can get to the 32 bars, still get rid of the bass. But now on this one, I'm going to get rid of all of these here. And I'm going to get rid of everything but the kicks and the claps. So what we're doing is we're creating a build. Okay, so here we go. We've got kicks and claps here. Nice. Now what I can do is select these parts and change the color of them. We'll make these the intro part of the drum, so I know that green is just 4/4s. Then I can change the next color. Let's make these say blue. And I know that the blue ones are just kicks and claps. Then we've got the full track. So before we get to the full track, I'm going to take out that here and the drums here. So this is now our build. Okay, this is where we're going to build the track from. We could have done this earlier in the stage. So we could have pulled this back so the drop was on the 32 bar, which is normally a house thing. However, we can extend this drop now and just generally get a drop at 41 bars if we want to instead. You get to decide where you want it to lie. So look, here we've got an intro. We've got the starts of a verse. We've then got a build up. We've then got the break. We've then got the drop, which we're going to do for 16 bars. Then what I'm going to do is keep those drums in, but just have the drums and the bass for the verse. We're then going to have the second half here. What we're then going to do is take all the drums out again here. So now all of our drums are gone from this. We've got another break, which is no bass, just instrumentation. Then we've got a drop again. So let's have a listen and see what we've got. Ready? This is a great time to think about adding in more transition effects because it gives you more of an idea about where to place them just by creating a basic arrangement. Now remember, all we've got is drums, bass line, melody of 2 of. So first melody is some pads. And then another one is like those arpeggiated sounds. But now it gives you an idea if you're going to be writing songs to this, writing lyrics. Here could be a nice swell before a crash. It's pretty nice. Already getting some vocal ideas for this. Nice clean vocal. Now we can start to bring in harmonies with the claps. That was a mistake there. It's supposed to be 4/4 on the kicks, but we've missed the kick. Kind of sounds okay. Nice. Build. We can now think about automating that arpeggio up. drop. Think about adding in some more synths to this to make it a bit more exciting. But you get the idea, right? We've got a pretty nice structure. Let's move to the end and see what our verse sounds like. Cool, second verse. As this gets towards the end of the second verse, we're going to get our little pad come in. Maybe a crash here. Cool, let's get to the end, see the last breakdown. Cool. Into the last chorus. Sweet. That's pretty much it. For an idea, the bare bones, and just like a beginner's guide to getting some sort of sound down, this is a really good template to follow. So thinking about having a groove first, so getting the drums down first, then thinking about maybe a melody, which we tried with some pads, but then after trying the bass line afterwards, the bass line became the driving force of it. So we got rid of those pads and made a groove with the drums and the bass, and then built our melodics around that drums and bass. Once we had a 16-bar loop, we just copied it over until it was about 3 minutes long, a standard commercial time, and then just took sections out. Once those sections come out, it still sounds really basic, but you've got an idea of what to do next. You've got a vocal idea or arrangement for vocals to think about afterwards, rather than just listening to the same 16-bar loop over and over again. Now, we've done nothing extra here. We've added no real effects. We've added some reverb and delay to one part, a little bit of EQ just to sculpt some sound. But creatively, we've got an idea down for something. Now, this is a good starting point for any production, any genre, any style. Taking it in those steps, getting a groove, understanding the groove, then working a melodic to get a basic idea works for any style, any genre, any platform.